what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. It is Wednesday, July 5th, 2017, the day after the 4th of July. And a lot of people still taking some extra time off here. It's an opportunity for a midsummer break, as it were. But we are here live today, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And, of course, a lot of things going on today. Trump is on his way to Europe for the G20. We'll be talking about that a little bit further in the show. And right now, the big news, of course, is the United Nations Security Council has convened an emergency meeting over North Korea's test of a long-range missile that could, in theory, reach Alaska, which the corporate media has stretched to say they can strike the United States of America. Well, Alaska is part of the United States, but that's really all it can reach. And they're making a big deal about it. Nikki Haley is up there screaming bloody murder about, we've got to do something. You know, how dare North Korea arm itself to deter an invasion when they know we want to invade them and finish off the Korean War. There are some cooler heads out there. France is saying that whatever is done about North Korea has to be done collectively, meaning all the nations together and not the United States acting unilaterally as it has so often done in recent memory. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that further in the show as well. But let's turn our attention right now to Syria. So far, we have not seen the expected false flag chemical weapon attack. Meanwhile, the corporate media is still out there with this latest OPCW report that sarin gas was used at Idlib. And therefore, Assad is the devil incarnate. He's the son of Darth Vader, or whatever else they're saying about him. But there are some problems. First and foremost, the OPCW report did not actually say who was responsible for the attack. And now it's come on out that prior to preparing this report, the OPCW did not actually go to Idlib, where the incident took place, nor did they visit the Syrian air base from which the alleged attack was carried out. So this is a major problem. This OPCW report is just written on basis of hearsay. And once again, there is no evidence to support it whatsoever. Meanwhile, on the ground in Syria, things are rapidly evolving, and the Syrian government is gaining much more ground. The Syrian Arab army has broken through the defense lines of militants in the Damascus suburb of Ain Tarma on last Sunday, so they're making rounds there. And it's kind of hard and fuzzy, you know, who's on whose side and so forth and so on. But we do know that off in the southeast, a lot of these rebel groups, U.S.-supported terrorists, are actually starting to turn on each other here. Now, the good news is, and I'm sure the people of Europe are really, really going to appreciate that, roughly 500,000 Syrian refugees who had gone to Europe have now come back to the government-controlled areas of Syria. The war is over for that part of the country, and the Syrian refugees are coming back home, which basically reminds you that the claim that the refugees were fleeing Assad was itself a lie. When the refugees started pouring into Syria, oh, we have to let them in. The evil Assad, they're afraid of Assad. Assad is going to torture them and do bad things. No, now that their homes are safe, there's no more bullets and bombs to worry about. They're going back home. So that's a good piece of news over there. Apparently, the Russian military police are getting ready to deploy in some new buffer zones inside Syria, and probably these are presumably to protect these Syrian refugees returning to their home, because we know the U.S.-backed terrorists love to target civilians. They have been all along. So that's working there as well. Now, remember, after the last false flag chemical weapon attack, and again, the OPCW report doesn't say who did it, and they wrote the report without actually visiting where the event took place or the airbase where supposedly the attack was launched from. And it was a false flag, and Donald Trump sent in 59 cruise missiles. Actually, they launched 60. One of them failed coming right out of the tube. And of the remaining 59, more than half actually missed the airbase and flew on to hit villages and towns and all kinds of other things. And even those missiles that hit the airbase didn't hit any major significant targets, didn't hit the tower, didn't crater the runway. The base was back in full operation in less than 24 hours. Well, Russia has now decided to use Syria once again as a demonstrator for the quality of their weapons, and they basically sent a mission to basically fire some of their advanced cruise missiles at Islamic State targets in Syria, and they destroyed 3 ammunition depot and a command post. And obviously this is, again, upping the ante tit for tat before President Putin and Donald Trump are due to have their meeting at the G20. And apparently the attack was carried out by Tupolev 95 MS strategic bombers, which took off from a base on Russian soil and refueled in midair before launching at targets on the border between the Hama and Homs provinces. And these were using the KH-101 missiles from a distance of about 1,000 kilometers. So it's an amazing demonstration of what they can do. And again, they destroyed 3 ammunition depot and an ISIS command post. Meanwhile, over in Iraq, there is growing evidence that there might have been a mass execution of Turkmen, 230 killed in Iraq. And this is apparently Iraqi Major Faris Aboud reported that a single field hospital servicing the Old City neighborhood in Mosul received 300 wounded during just one day. And many of those wounded were newly orphaned children who lost their entire families. However, the United Nations figures for the whole of Nineveh province, where Mosul is located, were 289 killed and 93 wounded during June. Now, maybe the disparity between the numbers is propaganda, or maybe it is simply in the fog of war. It is really hard to get a good, accurate count on the dead and injured in any conflict. Of course, we do remember back in Vietnam, we had to wait for that war to be completely over before the U.S. government finally owned up to the fact that we had lost 60,000 of our children in that epic fail. Now, down in Qatar, as you know, they've been granted an extension of the deadline to meet this list of Saudi demands. And the Saudi demands are so over the top, they're non-starters. They were never going to get any of this done. And in extending the deadline, we're seeing this battle of nerves between the Saudi rulers and Qatar's rulers, and Saudi Arabia essentially blinked. And the problem they're dealing with is they cannot actually isolate Qatar. They can invade, they can bomb, they may even do that. But right now, Qatar's ace in the hole, if you will, is the Saudi nemesis, Iran, along with Turkey, which is all of a sudden starting to surprisingly pivot away from the U.S. and Western influence. Now, as you know, one of the Saudi Arabia accusations against Qatar, which Qatar, by the way, denies, they're denying all of this nonsense, is that Qatar is the top funder of terrorism in the world. Anytime you're going to bomb somebody, the first thing you say is, oh, they're the top funder of terrorism in the world. But apparently, there's a think tank over in Great Britain, the Henry Jackson Society. They're a neoconservative think tank. And apparently they've ranked who is actually funding British terrorists, and the top of the list is Saudi Arabia. So we have a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black here. The IAEA, which is the nuclear weapons inspection arm of the United Nations, which is supposed to enforce compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they have filed their latest report on Iran, and to nobody's surprise, they're saying Iran is fully in compliance with the P5+1 deal. It is in compliance with its obligations. Now, over at the United Nations, U.S. Envoy Nikki Haley is disputing that. No, they're not in compliance. We know they're cheating. Oh, do you have any evidence? No, I can't reveal sources, but they're cheating. We have to invade them. We have to kill them. Okay, Nikki, here's your rifle. Here's your parachute. Here's your Dayglow orange jumpsuit. Go have fun here. Now, getting on back to North Korea. The Pentagon is vowing to protect U.S. and allies after Pyongyang's escalatory ICBM test. You know, they're the aggressors. They're the villain. They're just testing. Look at how many ICBMs the U.S. tested in recent weeks. Nobody screamed about it. Nobody took them up to the UN Security Council. Over in Washington, well, actually, they're all on break now, but Republican and Democratic lawmakers are demanding Donald Trump have a strong response after North Korea dared test a missile. And to basically show how tough they were, the U.S. and South Korea ran a drill for a missile intercept system. It's been misreported in some places that they were ballistic missiles, and yes, they can follow a ballistic arc, but it was basically an anti-missile system, and the missiles fall in the category of tactical missiles. But they're out there launching rockets like crazy to show North Korea their resolve to defend from an attack. Well, again, look who's doing all the attacking in recent years. And it hasn't been North Korea, hasn't been Iran, hasn't been Russia, has it? Now, there are a lot of voices that are out there, including Secretary of Defense Mattis, who are saying we should not get in to North Korea, even if they try and go in with a surgical strike against the nuclear weapons or a decap strike against Kim Jong-un. They're not sure they could control the aftermath, and it could turn into another jungle war like Vietnam. And if you look at how badly the U.S. did during when the Korean War was still being fought, because remember, it never officially ended. There's a ceasefire, but the war officially is still on. And it did not go well. The United States did not win there. Donald Trump recently has been sort of backing off on this idea of a military attack against North Korea, and he's trying to go the sanctions route. But even that may be a little bit obstructed. Now, Russia and China just issued a joint statement on the Korean conflict. And basically, Russia and China recognize North Korea has concerns that are fully justified with the record of recent U.S. invasions, regime changes, coups d'etats against other countries. Everyone's now even diplomatically admitting the U.S. has become a warmongering aggressor nation. And North Korea's concerns about being attacked and invaded are legitimate, as is its right to self-defense. Now, obviously, Russia and China oppose any military action into North Korea because it might not be able to be confined there. Could easily spread across the borders. And they are also ruling out across-the-board sanctions. Now, when you couple this with some of the other things that are being said at the Security Council right now, like the French delegation saying that the response to North Korea must be collective. Everybody's out there trying to pull the U.S. back and say, no, you cannot just act unilaterally on this. And that means, in all probability, if there is a Security Council resolution that is passed to authorize war on North Korea, Russia and China will probably veto it, and they do have a veto up there at the Security Council. And Russia and China pairing up like this underscores something that's going on in the background that a lot of people are not paying attention to. And this is an article over in Counterpunch talking about the great power shift. A Russia-China alliance will be the new global superpower. And they're saying official Washington might not fully appreciate the gradual change in the triangular relationship with the U.S. and Russia and China. But it is clear that the U.S. has made itself into the big loser. And yes, it has. And that's another indication that this country may be heading toward a Soviet Union-style collapse, which I think would be the best outcome for everybody. Least amount of blood, least amount of upset, least amount of pain and suffering for the ordinary people. Now, boy, there's a lot of military planes out there turning and burning right now. Poland has announced, or a Polish company has announced, plans to import Russian coal. They're going to ignore the sanctions there. They already have permission from the government of Poland to do so. And it basically comes down to the fact that they have a shortage of coal, and they need it. And they have domestic coal, but their production capacity is not able to meet the demand for the coal, for heating and manufacture and everything else, so that they're going to go where the coal is there to be bought. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Mike in Alaska, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha.
I'm regarding Korea. You know, they're putting out Alaska out there. It can reach Alaska. They're trying to scare everybody, but we're not scared. You know, it's just I'm not sure if, number one, I believe it. Number two, you know, when you go that far, and then you realize that most of Alaska is completely uninhabited, the chances of hitting, there's basically 3 cities that would be, you know, there's a lot of military bases, but there's not a lot of huge population. There's really only Anchorage, and that's 300,000 people. You know, that's not a huge city by any stretch of the imagination. So,
well, current nuclear doctrine for pretty much around the world is not to aim at the population centers. That was something that the United States did when it used nuclear weapons against Japan. But the current nuclear weapon doctrine is you aim for the military bases. And you take them out of action, especially those that have nuclear weapons that can be fired back at you. So
the way our country kind of moved out west is that all the towns are surrounding military bases, whereas Russia, they have a military base. It's really, you know, you drive out to the base.
Yes.
I'm in a town surrounded by 3 military bases. So basically you have, you know, civilization building out around, you know, shooting ranges and all the other stuff that they build, but they were there first in that sense. But even then, you know, they just got to ramp it up to get everyone, you know, everyone freaked out about it, and it would probably be something like, you know, when Japan invaded Alaska. You know, it sounded scary. You know, American soil had been taken for the first time ever, you know, in a long time by a foreign enemy, and really it was 2 islands that they ended up abandoning anyway.
Yes.
They didn't do much.
Yeah.
So
it was symbolic. Yeah. Well, I mean, common sense is going to tell you, if you really think about it from Kim Jong-un's point of view, the reason he's building up all these rockets and the reason he wants nuclear weapons is as a deterrent. He wants his country to be left alone. Now, unfortunately, he's got a mouth on him that I wish he would put into park a little bit more, because his inflammatory statements are not helping the situation. But the whole point of having nuclear weapons and delivery systems is to deter other countries from messing with your nation. Kim Jong-un is not just going to wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to go ahead and nuke Alaska just to prove I can do it, because he knows that the United States would then respond with nuclear weapons and turn North Korea into a giant green glowing glass parking lot and send in the Marines to paint the lines. And he's not going to do that, especially a man with his ego. He goes to bed at night dreaming of future North Korean students memorizing his face and his name, his picture on the currency, statues, coins, postage stamps, and all the rest of it. He doesn't want that to go away. No country has ever used nuclear weapons as a first strike against an enemy, except, of course, the United States of America. And my parents' generation was sold on picking up the cost of developing the U.S. nuclear arsenal because it was as a deterrent. Our government was saying, we will never again just haul off and use a nuclear weapon against an enemy, but we need to have these nuclear weapons so they will not invade us. And it makes perfect sense to have a deterrent, and you're not going to throw that deterrent away on a whim. Our government wouldn't do it. Iran wouldn't do it. Iraq wouldn't do it. And certainly North Korea will not do it either. Anyway, Mike, we got to let you go here and take a break for some commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And over in China, in response to the recent violation of the territorial waters by an American warship, they are now increasing their air and sea patrols around those islands. So that is still building on up. And again, it looks like the U.S. government has abandoned the idea that China is going to help bring North Korea to heel, and is just continuing on this path toward an eventual war with China to get that yuan out of the way of the Federal Reserve now. Meanwhile, going back to the UN Security Council emergency session on North Korea, the Chinese delegation is saying North Korea has a right to be very, very nervous with those THAAD missile launchers there, and with all the drills that are taking place along their coastlines. And that is very provocative. Now, many times I've told you the story about how Franklin Roosevelt literally engineered the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. He goaded them into it, following an 8-step plan crafted by Office of Naval Intelligence Lieutenant Commander Arthur H. McCollum. And Roosevelt spent all year implementing the 8 suggestions, and after the last one, Japan attacked at Pearl Harbor. They were maneuvered into it. One of the steps in McCollum's plan was to continually send American warships very close to the coast of Japan. Just sail back and forth. Just let them know that you're there. And the cleverness of McCollum's plan, he had spent a lot of time with the Japanese culture. And the 8 steps that were followed would look like minor issues to the American people. But to the Japanese sensibilities, they were deadly insults. And it looks like the U.S. is trying to do exactly the same thing with North Korea. So, now, as you know, we do have a lot of nuclear weapons, which we are presuming are very carefully being taken care of. But apparently, inspections of America's nuclear weapons facilities up until now have been a matter of public record. And there have been some embarrassments. People just aren't paying attention. Security is lax. And so the Pentagon is now going to start withholding nuclear base inspection results. The official reason being given is to not provide information that an enemy could use to penetrate those nuclear weapons bases. But I think the real facts are that I think the American people will be very, very nervous at the lax security and care of the nuclear weapons. And there is a parallel, of course, with the NSA and CIA's handling of their very potent cyber weapons, which were leaked out and are now forming the core of all these horrible ransomwares that are marching across the globe. That's an aspect of the story the corporate media continues to basically ignore, that this all began with the NSA violating the Fourth Amendment rights of every single American by developing these tools and developing the back doors in all of our systems that allow them to operate. And now all of this taxpayer-funded technology is in the hands of the cyber criminals. Now let's get on back to Governor Chris Christie. He angered a lot of people with this idea that, first of all, they closed all the public beaches in New Jersey because of the state's fiscal emergency. Then Christie, who has a cottage on the beach, went on down and was sunning himself on the beach, which was closed to the public. And now it turns out even to be worse, because apparently 6 families who own the cottages along that line next to Chris Christie's beach house were ordered to leave their homes under threat of arrest while Governor Christie lounged in the sun. Now, up until I heard that part, my attitude was, well, he does own the home. The beach is in front of his home, and, you know, this may just be, political backstabbing. But when you find out he uses the authority of the governor to literally force 6 families to temporarily leave their home so that he can feel more secure and relaxed on the beach, that definitely crosses a line. And a lot of people are very upset with him for that. That was an abuse of power and authority. Maybe he's just decided he's never going to run for governor again or any public office, and he's just going to coast out what remains of his career, and so he doesn't care anymore what anybody thinks about him. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials here. When we come on back, new developments in the area of voter fraud. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about election fraud. And right now, the number of states refusing to comply with requests for data from Trump's presidential Voting Integrity Commission, which Mike Pence is running, are now 31. 2 more just jumped on. And to nobody's surprise, it's mostly the blue states. A few red ones in there as well. And there's a new video out over at a website called votefraudisreal.com, where apparently a former Clinton staffer who got disgusted with what was going on, not unlike Seth Rich, has provided information. Not only were millions and millions of illegal immigrants being registered to vote in the primaries and the general election, they were actually being paid to vote for Hillary Clinton. So it is clearly, there was a lot more of it going on than anybody thought. And I think we mentioned a poll that came out yesterday about most Americans think the election fraud problem is larger than is being led on. But if we do not get a new election system in, we will never regain control of our country. Now, as you know, the G20 is starting up. Donald Trump just arrived in Warsaw. They were covering the taxiing in of Air Force One live on television. It's already intense. A lot of protesters out there because they see the G20 is basically a bunch of powerful, rich people carving up the planet to put more in their own pockets. And the police are already using tear gas and water cannons to get rid of those protesters, keep them away from the venues. Now, as you know, Donald Trump is planning to meet with Vladimir Putin, and his top aides are worried about what Trump is going to say at this meeting. And they're concerned the president will, quote-unquote, unwittingly ally himself with Putin, and the two leaders are going to basically find common ground over certain things, like the distrust of the media. And experts say that would be disastrous for Trump's administration. No, it would be disastrous for the deep state that's trying to control and corral Donald Trump. Now, contrary to early reports that Putin and Trump were just going to sort of meet at the sidelines of the G20, apparently it has been upgraded to a fully fledged bilateral sit-down meeting in conference room with aides and everything in attendance. It's going to be a big, big meeting between the two of them. They've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Getting on over to the corporate media, and we love to poke fun at them. There's been yet another Project Veritas video which has Jimmy Carr. Now, this was the guy who was caught on video as saying that he thought Americans were stupid as, you can insert the word there, for voting for Donald Trump. And he basically doubled down and said he didn't say anything wrong. In other words, he actually honestly does believe that anybody who voted for Donald Trump is just too dumb to be allowed to vote. How very elitist of them, which, given CNN's recent history, I think they're getting a good dose of humble. Now, over at TwitterAudit.com, which checks your Twitter followers for how many are real and how many are fake, somebody put in CNN and discovered 17 million of CNN's Twitter followers are fake. They're fake. Nearly half of CNN's Twitter followers are fake. It's all an illusion. It's all fairy tales. Now, there was a big stink. As you know, there was that that video of Trump body checking CNN at this wrestling event somebody made up, and it's actually kind of funny to look at. And it was tweeted out and it went all over the place. And CNN, their senior editor of CNN's K-File, Andrew Kaczynski, claimed to discover the identity of the Reddit user who made that video, and basically went on out and said that if he doesn't delete all the videos, they will reveal his real identity to the world. And that, of course, fired up Twitter in a big way. CNN is literally threatening people over what they're posting here. Now, under New York criminal code, CNN just broke the law. They're violating Section 135.60 of the New York Criminal Code regarding coercion. And even better, down in Georgia, and remember, CNN is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Ted Cruz just found a Georgia law that outlaws what CNN did. Apparently, CNN got the Reddit user's IP address illegally. They committed 2 crimes. And it gets even better than that, because it turns out they got the wrong guy. The Reddit poster they got with the IP wasn't the guy who made the video. They got the wrong person. Disaster after disaster after disaster after disaster. Now, let's talk about the economy for a little while here. Over the week, actually Tuesday morning, there was some kind of weird event where all of a sudden the technology stocks all crashed down to the same price. And they're calling it a computer glitch, but it looks more like somebody was specifically targeting those stocks. And there may have been a hack on the system that somebody was able to make a very quick profit from the intense volatility that was triggered. And this so-called glitch or hack sent shares in dozens of U.S. technology companies, including Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft, to the same price on Tuesday morning, leading some to apparently lose billions in market value. So if I were involved in looking into this, I would be looking for somebody who rode that straddle for a fast buck out there. Now, in the world of designer jeans, there's a company called True Religion, which is arrogant in the extreme. True Religion Jeans, they have now filed for bankruptcy. And again, you know, people don't have the money for jeans with fancy stitching on the pocket or jeans that are hawked by supermodels. People are getting jeans, they're going to get just your basic Levi Strauss working pants, because that's where they all began. And this idea of taking basically poor man's wardrobe and decorating it and trying to sell it as a rich man's wardrobe was not going to last anyway. I remember many years ago in Los Angeles, I was tangentially involved with this law firm, Jones Day Reeves and Pogue, that my then mother-in-law was working for. And they were involved in this huge lawsuit between Jordache and one of the, the Nakash brothers and the Jordache brothers. And again, it was all about copyright infringement over the design of a stitching on the pocket. And millions of dollars were being spent on this lawsuit, and millions of dollars were on the line. And I remember thinking about how, even back then, if you looked in the streets of Los Angeles, a lot of homeless, a lot of hungry. You sometimes wonder what people's priorities really are about that sort of thing. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Pat in Fort Worth, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Howdy.
Howdy.
I just wanted to, I wanted to bring up that Convention of States.
Yes.
Because I think that we're, somebody just called WBAP right here, who have just bragged that they're what second biggest influential radio network in the country, and they do go over 38 states. 38 states, okay.
Yes.
A lot of power and a lot of good reputation. But I think we got Operation Mockingbird going on here.
Oh yeah.
Because when they program people off the air like me, because they don't like what I say, and say they can't hear me. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, that's usually the way it is, something like that. And right now they got Senator Jim DeMint on there, and he's not telling the truth. I don't know what's going on.
A politician lying? Surely thou dost jest.
Well, you know, I'm not for term limits, because we wouldn't have had some of the good ones we've had in the past, you know, that can stay there till they die. And we just need to get out and do our job. If we don't do our job, we're going to lose the Constitution. And what they're doing is they're pushing the balanced budget amendment because 38. Let's see, 38 states at least have a call for a constitutional convention on the balance of budget issue, and all you have to have is, what did I say? 32 have called, and you need 30. I just woke up and heard all this. 34 is all you have, and you automatically have a convention call.
Yes.
And it's out of the control of everybody. I mean, I don't think Trump has any control over it.
No.
Nobody has. And this is a very strange situation, because one caller said, why not? Why now? Well, you can bring up homeless. You can bring up anything people have a touch button for that they are interested in. But the fact that the only one issue, which is a balanced budget amendment, needs 2 more states before we have a full-blown convention, just like we had when we got the Constitution to start with, and it can be a runaway thing. And the one question they don't want asked is, so you get a bunch of new amendments, what's going to make anybody follow those, because they haven't followed the ones we've had with all the balanced budget laws we've had on the books.
Yeah, that really is the point.
Now.
Yeah, a constitutional convention can come on in with a whole new bunch of amendments and for the Constitution. But if we have a federal government that doesn't have any respect for that Constitution, and our current federal government does not, they're ignoring it all the time. They're attacking it all the time. Now, the reason there is a provision for a constitutional convention in Article 5 is a last step attempt to reset the central government before it devolves into revolution and civil war. And they didn't do it leading up to our first civil war. They couldn't get enough states involved because the nation was pretty much evenly split on the issue of slavery and secession. So, but yeah,
it have a problem with.
Yeah, if the federal government won't
getting the truth out there,
if the federal government won't,
the truth is not coming out.
Well, it's coming out here on the independent media. And we are growing. We are in fact growing. Let
me tell you something that most people don't know.
What?
Okay, you don't know that there's a little aide down here in Texas named Gregory Watson. Because my husband and I put him on the spot one time, and he said he was for a convention. And what he did was he went to all the states that had passed. When we just had 13 states. He went to all the ones who didn't pass this call for a convention on an issue, which is something like the last amendment. He actually got the last amendment passed, and nobody even knew it happened. And the way he did it was he went to all the other states that hadn't voted for this one and convinced them to vote for it. And it says you cannot pass a law. You cannot pass a law raising your salary until you're voted back in office. I can't remember 27th Amendment. I can't remember the exact wording, but that sounds really good, doesn't it? So you can't pass yourself a raise that you'll get tomorrow to get you out of trouble, and something like that. Because I'm not thinking too well because I'm so mad at these people here.
Well, I understand that. I mean, my solution to that one in the blueprint for the New America is that all congressional, legislative, official salaries will be tied to the average wage and salary of the working American people. So they don't get a raise until we, the people, get a raise. And, obviously in a nation that's bought and paid for by the money junkies, they still live their dream of all the wealth going to their pockets and all the rest of us just standing outside starving and looking envious and so forth.
Well, what concerns me about this Gregory Watson amendment he got passed, this last one, is because every call for a constitutional convention on the balanced budget amendment, it has to be one issue that 34 states call it for.
Yes.
And that's the only issue that has 32 already. And I think they've established that you can't go back and rescind your call like Florida and Alabama and different state, another state did, to set them back. We set them back since 1990, one, I think.
All right. Well, listen, we're coming up on a commercial break here. So let me just finish. You're facing an uphill fight because obviously a balanced budget means a huge loss of revenue to that privately owned Federal Reserve Bank. And so I can imagine their lobbyists, even today, are fanned out across the country trying to find some way to hammer a stake through this idea of an Article 5 convention. And just stake it out on the ground and say, it's dead, it's over and done with, we will reign supreme. At this point, I think our system is irredeemably corrupted, and I really do see a Soviet Union-style collapse in the future. At that point, I think a new constitutional convention by the states will be necessary and inevitable as we come up with a new government that is more like what the government was supposed to be under the Constitution. Limited, the states are independent and sovereign. The federal government just minds its own business. It arbitrates between the states, and that's basically it. We need to get back to that simple model.
Now.
No, we have the
10th Amendment.
Well, we do, but we have a government that's absolutely ignoring it. And frankly,
I just don't see how any convention can change a heart of a wicked person.
Well,
all it can do is undo everything we've worked for.
I'm talking about what happens after that central federal government collapses, and all those evil people are tarred, feathered, and run out of town on a rail. And at that point, I see a tremendous value in having an Article 5 constitutional convention to sort of retool and re-engineer that central government more in line with what was intended by the original Constitution. Anyway, I got to let you go. We got to do a commercial break. Thank you for the phone call, Pat. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, yesterday we were talking about how all of a sudden Donald Trump is peddling U.S. natural gas exports in Russia's backyard, possibly being the beginning of a slight variation on that oil price war that really didn't work out all that well because it caused more damage in the West than it did to Russia. Russia's economy is actually right now the most diverse of any nation on earth. And so trying to attack their primary crop, there really isn't one. They've got a lot of different crops here. Now all of a sudden we're finding out that Total Oil is going to sign a $4.8 billion oil deal with Iran. This is a French company, and so they're starting to ignore the sanctions as well. They've had enough with all these U.S. sanctions and the U.S. whining and crying and saying, you can't do business with this person, you can't do business with that person. They're all suffering because of it. The people of Europe have endured a tremendous amount of hardship, damage to their agricultural sector because of all this nonsense with sanctions, and they're pretty much fed up at this point. What's the U.S. going to do? Invade France for not going along with the sanctions? I don't think so. France is a nuclear power. Now, apparently South Africa is getting ready to do what the Russian Federation did some years back. They're going to nationalize their central bank. And, of course, the Rand tumbled on that report. And we may see South Africa now get added to the U.S. government special high-interest targets list because you don't break free of those privately owned, privately controlled central banks. Story coming out of Express in Great Britain. Experts are saying that the economic growth rates in the Eurozone have been wildly exaggerated. This according to a leading economist. The numbers aren't that good. Apparently, British house prices are on the brink of a collapse that could be as deep as 40%. Going to be a lot of underwater mortgages over there. Over in Italy, there was a bank there at the state bank. They put up a want ad for 30 jobs. 85,000 people showed up to apply. Even on Fox News this morning, they were admitting half of the able-bodied American workers do not have jobs. Almost 50%. That's way beyond the Depression of the 1930s. That's how bad things are. Getting on back to Italy, they're now starting to talk about nationalizing their bank and simply writing off the $32 billion in bad loans. So what are we going to do? Invade Italy now? Bring them back under the warm embrace of a private central bank? Another story here. This is from governmentslaves.com. Colleges are preparing our young people for an economy that no longer exists. And basically, college education's been turned into a scam. Another little money-making scam. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Apparently, the deadlock up in Maine over their budget has ended. LePage has signed the budget. They were shut down for a total of 3 days. And apparently the Democrats agreed to eliminate a proposed increase in Maine's lodging tax and in return receive additional funding and assurances on key social service programs. So Maine seems to be sort of kind of back in business, unlike Illinois here. U.S. auto sales fall for a 4th straight month in June, and they've got a long way to go. They have got a long way to go. I mean, if you look at the TV ads, you can see it. I mean, the deals are great. If anybody actually had money, now would be a wonderful time to be buying a car. The prices are very low. They're literally going with 0-rate car loans to just try and get those things off the lots and into the hands of people. And we just don't have the money out here. Frankly, I think Trump ought to take a lesson from Ronald Reagan's cheese program. There was a huge surplus of cheese in the United States of America. Nobody was buying it. They had way too much. And so what Reagan ultimately did was the government basically bought it all up, if you will, and handed it out for free. And I understand a car is a little bit larger than a block of cheese, but it was a big block of cheese. And I don't know. Maybe find some way to get these cars into the hands of people who are driving these older, more polluting cars. Remember the cash for clunkers concept. Maybe it would have been more successful if they say, get rid of your old, junky, leaking oil car, and we'll just give you a new car. They're going to have to do something with that inventory. They can't just leave it on those lots forever. The weather is going to take its toll. The sunlight is going to take its toll. They're out in the open. They're going to start aging. We're already seeing the closing of auto factories all over the place. And current estimates are that most Americans will not consider buying a new car or newer car until sometime in the 2020s, if even then. Now, surprisingly enough, despite the bad news about Britain's housing sector, a report from Oxford Economics predicts that Great Britain will surge ahead of its Eurozone peers over the next 5 years. In other words, they're better off without being tied to the Eurozone, which costs a huge amount of money and really didn't give anything back for all that money except more refugees and more nitpicking rulemaking. Same thing that Ireland was saying the other day. Membership in the EU has cost Ireland dearly to very little benefit. Now, down in Italy, there's an Italian member of parliament sending a message to Macron saying we can't afford to be pro-EU anymore. The migrant crisis is tearing the whole bloc apart. And yes, it really is. I used to think it was going to be that European Central Bank that would destroy the European Union. But no, it's this globalist New World Order refugee thing. There are now parts of Europe where the Europeans are a minority in the population. Frankfurt, Germany. Germans are now the minority in Frankfurt, Germany. Now, the Maltese Prime Minister, who was president of the EU when the Brexit vote happened, is describing it as this disastrous creature, and he's vowing to stop Brexit from ever happening again. You're all our prisoners, you're all our debt slaves, we will not let you go. Apparently the Czech Republic is now looking at getting out of the European Union. I mean, the deal has all been downside. When the European Union was first created, it was sold to the people of Europe as simply an open travel, open trade, open border trading bloc. That was it. And they would have the border around the European Union, and within the European Union, you could just go wherever you want. No checkpoints. That was very attractive. But over time, Brussels has grabbed more and more authority to itself until it's become this huge tyrannical force that just justifies its existence by passing all kinds of nitpicking laws. I mean, even down to the supermarket, the produce all has to be a certain size range, and anything that's too short or too long gets thrown out. I mean, really ridiculous stuff. And as Ireland said, it's costing the EU member states vast sums of money, and they're not really getting anything of any value back for it. And so now Italy is openly discussing the Euro exit in Parliament. And they're basically saying, find some relief for the debt that we're under, or Italy will be on the way. Meanwhile, Italy is furious because Austria has now deployed troops and armored vehicles to their shared border to block any more refugees coming out of Italy and into Austria. So that whole open borders thing is definitely falling apart. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And we're going to take a phone call from Ralph in New York City. Aloha, Ralph. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay?
Mike?
Yes, you're on the air.
I want to ask you a question concerning civil forfeiture, concerning law enforcement doing all over the country. In a Trump administration, what's going to basically happen concerning civil forfeiture? Even though today we had a police officer shot and killed here in New York City in the Bronx area today. I don't know if you're aware about that.
No, I hadn't seen that yet. I know there's an active shooter situation in Dallas right now.
It was a shooting in New York. Cop got shot in the face in the South Bronx today in New York. You know, reminds me of the movie Fort Apache with Paul Newman back in the 70s.
Yes.
You know, and also reminds me of the quotes of Serpico he said back in the 70s, in the early 80s, in his speeches concerning fascism and predatoryism among law enforcement against the public being done towards them every day. And now you're starting to see people taking anger against them now, and also civil forfeiture. I just want to see what's going to be the outcome in the future of law enforcement. Are they going to push back, or are they just going to basically just stand by and let everything hit the fan? What's your opinion on all this?
Well, obviously, the police have become more of a curse than a blessing for large portions of the country. Now, here in Hawaii, we're actually very lucky. Our local HPD, they're very cool people. I know quite a few of them. There's not a lot of gratuitous civil forfeiture going on. I mean, they will strip the drug dealers of their wealth. We only had one real bad cop incident involving injury of an innocent person, and that happened like about 4 years ago, and I think the cop was let go. So we're not dealing with that degree of problem here in Hawaii that you have there on the mainland. What we do have, of course, are very, very expensive fines for traffic violations. Using your cell phone while driving, that's a $300 ticket and so forth. But otherwise, our police really are a benefit to our local community. Now, that sadly is not the case for much of the country, and the civil forfeiture laws have gone completely out of control, as has the police brutality. And this mindset that is literally being drilled into the police forces by these various Israeli training experts who are training the police to treat Americans the way the IDF treats the Palestinians, and we're starting to see the results. Innocent, law-abiding Americans are getting killed, and the police are never held to account for it. So at some point, if the general public sees the police as a threat rather than a blessing, there's going to be a pushback. And again, I don't want to see that, but it almost does seem inevitable at this point.
Well, I'm just saying, get back to civil forfeiture. I mean, civil forfeiture goes back in the era of the 80s when Ronald Reagan was in office, I presume, right? And that's a goody two shoe for law enforcement, and also the era of the cop culture. Even though it reminds me of the TV series of Miami Vice, the same way you're starting to see with civil forfeiture. All that became in that era. You know, do you believe so?
Well, when civil forfeiture was first put in place, it was there for a good reason. The idea that when you actually caught a real criminal, like a drug dealer or a money launderer engaging in crime, that you had the legal authority to basically strip them of their ill-gotten wealth and return it to the public treasury. Unfortunately, because of the laxness with which the civil forfeiture laws are written, police departments whose budgets were being cut by their local jurisdictions started to rely on civil forfeiture to bring additional money into their budgets. And literally, instead of going on out and finding criminals, which is very, very hard, they started going on out and looking for civil forfeiture opportunities because that was a fast moneymaker. And not only does it undermine public confidence in the police forces, it has to be bad for the morale of those police officers who want to really do a good job. Again, going on back to what happened with Serpico, where more and more of the police get caught up on this idea of just grabbing wealth away from the American people, and it's okay because it's the law. The law says I can do this. Well, again, every tyrant will pass laws saying that their henchmen can go on out and take things from the public. But right now, the current state of the civil forfeiture laws in this country, we're not that far different from the days of Robin Hood, when Sir Guy of Gisborne's tax collectors would just ride across the countryside stealing pigs and chickens and farmers' daughters whenever they felt like it.
Wow. It's amazing, because I figured all the civil forfeiture laws were being put in the 80s during the Reagan era, and they don't see these laws going away anytime soon involving civil forfeiture. That's a good issue for them, right? I believe so, right, Mike?
Well, some of the states are now starting to pass laws saying that civil forfeiture cannot be imposed until a crime is actually proven. The reason the civil forfeiture got out of control was the laws were written so the police could take property from you under a mere suspicion that it may have been intended for illegal activity. And again, a terrible, tragic example that I know of. Claire and I used to have a friend who lived here on Oahu who had this gardening store, and they were going to this trade show. And trade shows for the gardening stores tend to be more of a cash and carry kind of an operation. So this guy had about 10 grand in his pocket, and going through TSA, they said, "Have you got any cash?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to a trade show. I got $10,000." And they said, "Oh, it's over the limit," and they took the money. And ultimately, he was driven out of business because he didn't have new inventory coming on in. That's a very inappropriate use of that. But some states are already starting to pass new laws saying that there must be a proof that a crime has really occurred, meaning they can be indicted, charged, and sent to trial. Then you can take their money, and you can't do it before then.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Okay, now, apparently over at the New York Slimes, they're in a state of shock. We are shocked, I tell you. Do you hear? We are shocked. Because they're having to actually finally acknowledge that Trump's illegal immigration crackdown is, in fact, actually working. Fewer and fewer people are coming across that border. More and more are being sent back across that border. And, of course, for the liberal media, where they've been trying to create this sympathetic worldview of the illegals who are in the country, and say, oh, we have to feel sorry for them. Well, I do, but I'll feel sorry for them when they're back on their side of the border. Because, again, even Fox News was admitting this morning, almost half of able-bodied Americans have not been able to find work for months, if not years. We have to get jobs for those people first before we allow anybody else to come on in and start working here. Period. End of discussion. And yes, that's nationalist. And yes, it's putting America first. And that's the way it really ought to be. And I think Obama was betraying his globalist affiliations when he came on out with that comment about the dangerous nationalism rising in the United States of America. But what's wrong with love of your country? What's wrong with wanting your country to be better? What's wrong with putting the interests of your country first? It's the reason we have the borders. And the globalists aren't finished, but they definitely have suffered a major, major setback. Now, the other day we were talking about Common Core, and it does really seem like Common Core's goal was to dumb down American children, to fill their head with a bunch of memorized nonsense that's irrelevant, to flat out lie to them about the Bill of Rights. Because we've seen the Common Core curriculum where they're telling the kids that rights are something the government gives you if you behave and can take them back at any time. One of the Common Core curricula on the Second Amendment describes it as saying you can keep and bear arms only if you are in a government militia. That's not what the Second Amendment says at all. They're lying to our kids. And it's producing very poor scholastic results, probably in part because these kids are finishing the Common Core curriculum with a lot of nonsense in their head that just doesn't match the real world. Now, down in Florida, they did a daring experiment. They dumped Common Core. And the following year, that school skyrocketed to #1 in the English language arts with a 90% scoring proficiency. Contrast that with those schools up in Baltimore, which are using Common Core. Not one of them had a single student score as proficient in any of these academic tests. Okay, now, I found this article on Bitcoin that is a very in-depth explanation of what it is and how it works, and you can take a look at that. I still have my concerns and doubts about it, and that is reinforced by this article that came out of the Hacker News. The largest cryptocurrency exchange, BitHum, has been hacked, resulting in a loss of more than $1 million in various cryptocurrencies after a number of its user accounts were compromised. Now, BitHum, or maybe it's Bithum, is South Korea's largest cryptocurrency exchange. It's got 20% of the global Ether trades and 10% of the global Bitcoin trade, and will exchange it back and forth for South Korea's currency, the won. And they got hacked into, and a lot of those Bitcoins simply disappeared. Now, I wonder who would do that. And I wonder if they were using those NSA tools. See, that's the real scary thing about these CIA and NSA hacking tools. They're basically weaponized. And the government over the years has mandated our computers be compromised so that they're open to these weaponized tools. And now they are out in the hands of criminals. Or maybe it's the NSA that's doing all this hacking and ransomware. Kaspersky already came on out and said that their evidence was that the Equation Group hackers were actually part of the NSA. And maybe that's the real reason the government just doesn't seem to take the cybercrime problem all that seriously. Maybe like civil forfeiture. It's just another way to loot and plunder the American people by a desperately broke government. And it doesn't matter how much they take from you. They can't ever pay off that national debt because of the way private central banking is set up. It's impossible. Now, as you know, following this Petya or not Petya ransomware attack, the corporate media was out there saying, oh, it's Russia, had to be Russia. Russia does all these bad things. Well, apparently the police in Ukraine think it actually came out of one of their largest accounting software firms in the company, and they have seized the servers for a full forensic analysis. And the head of Ukraine Cyber Police, Sergei Demedjuk, seized all of this servers from MEDOC, and they're going to be looking into it. Gee, I wish we could get them those DNC servers to take a good look at. And meanwhile, NATO is out there saying that not Petya cyber attack is from a state actor. They're going to blame somebody for it and use it as yet another excuse for a war. Remember, we talked about a virtual 9/11? Seems to be on the verge of happening here. There are just too many people in this world who think war is their best solution for the mess they've made. They're going to blow it all up because they can't think of anything better to do, and they're not going to accept responsibility for messing it up in the first place. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Frank in London. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Mike. just on the subject about the gradual shift in power and this alliance between Russia and China, I also think that Turkey has a pivotal role to play in this with regard to the Middle East and Western Europe. Now, I think Erdogan is acutely aware of this and the important role he can play, because I mean, you imagine if they form an alliance with Iran, for instance, that could well spell the end of Western powers in the Middle East.
Well, Russia and Iran are already very closely aligned. They've got a mutual defense pact. Turkey is a player. They're not a huge amount of land, but they do have weapons and other resources. We're starting to see the world turn away from dominance by the United States. We are a dying and failing empire.
And the problem is, in Western Europe, I can see something. I think we will get this alliance with America. I think what it would come to would be an every man for himself mentality. Some of them would be, I think some countries might be already secretly pivoting towards Russia. For instance, you can see that there is a change of mind taking place in Germany.
Yes.
You know, amongst German people, they began to engage their common sense.
I think Merkel just came on out and said Germany and the United States are still partners, but they're no longer friends. I mean, that's a major diplomatic signal.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Don in Iowa. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Yesterday, I think it was, you were talking about the movie The Spotlight and the Catholic priests that were guilty, convicted, and everything of child abuse. And I saw that movie. It was a great movie. I was sitting on a airplane flight, and I watched it. If you're on an overseas flight, they have these movies you can watch.
Yes.
I watched it once, and then I watched it again. I think I watched it 3 times. I just kept on watching it over and over again. It was a powerful movie, and I'd never seen. And Michael Keaton was really good in it.
Yes.
And I've never seen any explanation of it, really. I mean, the newspapers don't really explain it, what happened and stuff. But one thing I learned from that is these priests, I always thought they were gay, but they're not. They're not necessarily homosexual. They just want to abuse kids. They don't care if it's a boy or a girl, according to that movie.
Well, there was a political agenda, political correctness idea to try and separate pedophilia from homosexuality, but there's no question there's a high degree of overlap as well, and most of the victims of clergy child sexual abuse tend to be the young boys. Not always. They do get some of the young girls. And we've actually got a couple of stories a little further on in coming out of the Vatican that I think are going to be very enlightening to you. But getting on back to the Spotlight, the reason I brought it up was that this newspaper column realized there was a big problem, and they wanted to report on it honestly, because that's what journalism is supposed to be about. This is something that potentially affects our readers, especially those who are parents. You need to get it. And all this tremendous pressure was brought to bear. Oh, you can't say anything bad about the church. Just like today, it's you can't say anything bad about Israel. And these people showed a tremendous amount of courage in moving forward with the story. The kind of courage that, like you find with Edward R. Murrow, who continued his campaign against Senator Joseph McCarthy, despite all the pressure that was coming on. And even when it was all over, Senator McCarthy got censured by the Congress, but he didn't lose his job, and Edward R. Murrow lost his, ultimately. But that was the sacrifice he was willing to make. Okay?
Well, change the subject. What about platinum? Why is platinum so cheap right now, the mineral platinum?
I don't know, but I need to put you on hold. Don't hang up, and I'm going to come right back to you. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Don in Iowa. And, Don, you had another question you wanted to ask.
metals. Platinum is the rarest of all the precious metals. It's been below gold for a long time, and now palladium has almost caught up with platinum. Right now, platinum's 908 and palladium's 838, and I don't understand what's going on. They said it might be because they're not building. They think in the future will be not so many diesel car platinum. They use platinum, I think, for diesel catalytic converters. They use palladium for gasoline catalytic converters. Well, they think it's all going to be electric in the future.
Well, that could be part of it. I mean, in terms of the investment potential for platinum, I mean, just a single coin is, very expensive, and most people who are on a tight budget are doing their metals investing in traditional gold and silver, which have more pop culture buzz. Fewer and fewer people know about platinum. But you're right. One of the biggest industrial uses for platinum has been catalytic converters, and the first catalytic converters for motor vehicles, diesel and regular gasoline, used platinum. But lately they're starting to move away from that because it is so expensive. They're using more palladium, and also rhodium is taking off in the catalytic converter application.
Well, I'm looking at this chart right now. Rhodium is more expensive than platinum right now.
Well, I think we're looking at the transition in the catalytic converters is probably driving that price right now.
They say also you think the hydrogen fuel cell technology will ever amount to anything? Because they say if it does, they'll have to use a lot of the palladium and platinum. They're catalysts, and they'll have to use that a lot if the hydrogen fuel cell technology ever actually takes off.
Well, obviously in the catalytic converters, and by the way, scrap metal dealers will salvage those catalytic converters and try and get, it's just a little tiny amount, but they do try and get it out of there chemically. The hydrogen fuel cell, the big drawback on that is that the hydrogen and oxygen have to be stored pretty much cryogenically, and cryogenic hydrogen, there is no tank design that will hold it without seepage through the walls. Gaseous hydrogen, yes. Cryogenic hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, no. It was remember the Apollo moon rocket launches, and they'd take off, and there was all that ice that came off the side of the launcher. That was from where the hydrogen was leaching through and freezing the water in the air, and they had to keep topping that off. But again, for most passenger-side cars, I don't know that there's going to be a technology for a hydrogen tank for gaseous room temperature hydrogen that will ever be large enough to give it that kind of a range. I'm in agreement. I think as battery technology continues to take off, electric's going to be the way to go, and of course Hawaii being a very liberal state, there are already parking spaces all around here who have free electric hookup. Where you can charge your car while you go into the Long's drugstore. There's one there, and they're popping up all over the place. And Claire and I have seriously talked that when we finally do have enough money to get into a car, that we are going to go with a hybrid or an electric.
Right. Well, as far as Trump, I think one good thing about Trump is he hasn't gone to war yet. He might just be bluffing. He's talking about Korea, and he might just trying to jawbone everybody. Maybe. Hopefully,
he might.
Hopefully, he won't go to war.
Well, we don't want to go to war. I certainly don't want to go to war. But you're right. He may be going in there as this tough, aggressive president to give himself some negotiating room to pull on back. On the other hand, that cruise missile attack into Syria was definitely a very aggressive act on his part. But again, the part that we don't know is how much is he being lied to by his own advisors. They may have gone to him and said, Assad just used poison gas on the people of Idlib, and Trump reacted to that news, even though very clearly there were reasons to doubt that story. And we've got people like McMasters and Harry Reid saying we can control the president just by controlling what he knows. Lie to him in the briefing reports, and he'll give us what we want. And Trump would not be the first president to be manipulated that way. John F. Kennedy was being manipulated that way regarding the war in Vietnam. And again, I think Trump erred in holding over too many of the Obama people, too many of the career inside the Beltway people. He should have brought in more people for the White House who were qualified to do the job, but outside that Beltway circle of corruption. You don't drain the swamp by hiring the alligators. And that's basically what Trump did.
Well, I just keep hoping for the best. Anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you very much, Mike.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Tony, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. Yeah, Trump should have brought you in. Listen, Trump, Mike, I read an article last week in Fox News. Now I know why the money junkies want North Korea. I read that they have over $1 trillion worth of minerals.
Yes.
Okay, that's why they want North Korea. And that's why I have a feeling Trump is going to invade sooner or later.
Could very well be. I mean, we've already seen it demonstrated that when U.S. corporations want natural resources, they don't want to have to pay the fair market value for them. That's what led to the situation in Cuba under Batista. It's what led to the situation in Iran underneath the Shah. And that's what led to Afghanistan. The oil companies wanted a pipeline right of way, but they didn't want to pay the full price for it. We'll just let the American kids go get killed invading Afghanistan and changing the government, and we'll get our pipeline right of way at the price we think it should be. And so it would not at all be a surprise if one of the reasons to go into North Korea were all those minerals, because there is a lot there.
Exactly. Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to Kuya Johnny in San Francisco. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. This is Johnny calling from the People's Republic of San Francisco.
Okay.
And I want to let everybody know that on July 8th, we have a United America First Peace Rally in Sacramento at the State Building from 12 to 5. I can say it's UnitedAmericaFirst.com is the website, and we're out there. We're going to fight. We're fighting against the Cal-Exit sanctuary cities, SB 54, the gas tax bill, the firearms and ammo restrictions, illegal immigration, indoctrination of our children, and I also believe about the vaccinations too as well. And there's going to be guest speakers like the Bay Stick Man, Kyle Chapman, and Omar Navarro will be out there, who is running against Mad Max Maxine Waters. So hopefully we'll get him in, and that'll be the beginning of the end of the Democratic Party here in California.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the way Maxine Waters is behaving, and there's a question of competency there. And all I can say is, in her district, just keep your eyes open for election fraud, because there's no rule that says election fraud is only is confined to the presidential races. We're looking at some of these old guard people who've been in Congress forever, and they're doing a horrible job. And we keep hearing from their home states and home districts that nobody seems to vote for them. Why is it they still seem to win the elections? And again, we're getting indications the election fraud problem is far, far larger than anybody had imagined. We now have 31 states refusing to go along with the Voting Integrity Commission. So there's definitely a major problem out there. Now, the good news is, I don't know if you got this or not, a judge down in San Diego just threw out that part of California's gun law limiting the size of magazines you can have in your weapon. So that one's already gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the magazine ban on the rest of California has been put on stay right now. So it's a court-ordered stay. So.
Okay, well,
we just got to keep on going beyond that.
One more time, the time and place where this is all taking place.
Okay, this is going to be at our California State Capitol building. That's 1315 10th Street, Sacramento, California. Saturday the 8th, which is this weekend, at 12 to 5 p.m.
All right, well, do me a favor.
The website is...
Oh, yes, give me the website.
The website is UnitedAmericaFirst.com. All
right, we'll be sure and send me some...
come help support and change California back to an American country instead of a People's Republic.
All right, we'll be sure and send me some pictures, okay?
I sure will.
All right, wish I could be there. Unfortunately, I cannot. All right, well, we're going to let you go here. The phone lines are now open, 800-313-9443. So call on in on whatever is on your mind. Let's see if anything new is developing. Fox is now covering that story about CNN trying to blackmail the Reddit user, and of course they got the wrong guy, as it turns out. I think we're starting to see the corporate media go to war against itself, which I think is a very good thing. Right now, Fox has almost double the ratings of CNN. That's how much trouble CNN is in, which is why it's such a giggle to have Jeff Zucker out there saying, our viewers trust us more than ever before. Okay, Pinocchio, if that's what you really want to think here. But we're seeing, obviously, the total audience for the corporate media has been in decline for quite some time. And now it looks like they're starting to fight each other over what's left. And that, I think, would be a very, very good thing. And Fox News, obviously, operating from a position of strength on that. Okay, going to take another phone call. Fran in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, nui nui, Michael.
Aloha,
hey,
nui
I've
nui.
got one. I've got one simple question. Why is it? Here we go. Why is it that healthcare reform isn't a bipartisan effort, and why is it not then cobbled together in a bipartisan way and is put before the people for votes on whether, yes, we'll do this one, or no, we won't? Are we a democratic republic, or what? I mean, this foolishness with all of this absolutely unnerving going around with these Congress critters is ridiculous. Who says they have the right to create a healthcare system for us? Why can't we have a voice on what is being created?
Well, to answer your question, we're going to step on back here and remember that Obamacare was never about the health of the American people. It was basically a giveaway to the health insurance industries, Democratic cronies in those health insurance industries, who basically wrote the Affordable Care Act for Obama. And then it was ramrodded on through, and it's being lauded as one of Obama's signature accomplishments in the Oval Office. And so the Democrats in Congress want to keep Obamacare because their Democratic cronies and the health insurance companies are still getting the money, and Obama's name is on it. And the Republicans want to basically take the scam over and have the money flowing to their Republican cronies in various health insurance companies. And that's what the fight is all over, and that's why they refuse to repeal Obamacare before they come up with a new replacement. Because if they repeal Obamacare and all of a sudden the health insurance companies are forced to compete for our business by offering us better service, lower deductibles, people are going to remember health care was really a lot better before Obamacare came along. The government basically mucked it up, and now they're just trying to swap one muck for another muck. And Donald Trump was right to push for just flat-out repeal. Just say, we're going to repeal it and go back to the fair market system. Personally, I think we ought to go back to the way things were before Nixon signed the Health Care Maintenance Organization Act, when medical care was handled as a service, and there were strict limits on how much profit-making could be done off of doctor and hospital care. And that's what kept medical care affordable to the American people and made it high quality, because the doctors and the hospitals and the clinics had to compete for your business by building a reputation for the best quality care at the lowest possible price. When I was a kid, everybody said competition is always a good thing. You're going to get higher quality to the products and services you're buying, and the price will be kept on down. These days, there's almost no competition left in our country. Everything is either a giant monopoly or it's a government-protected, government-mandated industry. And again, we knew that Obamacare was going to be a disaster because of what happened when they mandated automobile insurance. The premiums went up, the deductibles went up, and the auto insurance companies had the attitude of, you're going to have to give your money to someone of us, so we don't really care anymore.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And again, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, we are continuing to see a lot of release of information coming out of Vault 7, which was this WikiLeaks dump of the CIA's hacking capabilities. And while we can decry the very obvious violation of our civil rights and the Bill of Rights in all of this spying, you do have to sometimes admire some of the very clever things they have come on up with. And apparently there's an article over in Activist Post where the CIA can geolocate your computer by listening to nearby Wi-Fi signals. If you're out and about traveling through your local town, the spyware on your computer is listening to nearby Wi-Fi outlets that have already been cataloged as to their identifying name and their location. And remember the big stink when it turned out Google was doing this? When their Google camera cars were going around, they were also snarfing up all this Wi-Fi data. Maybe they were the ones who built the catalog for the CIA. And they can literally find you. So even if you turn off GPS, even if you wrap your cell phone in one of those signal blocking things, if you turn on your computer, they can still locate you. It is a little bit scary. And one of the things that bothers me about laptops these days, in the good old days, the Wi-Fi was on a physical switch. You could actually turn it off and it would be off. Today it's software control, which means it can be turned back on without your knowledge, so that the government can get into your computer and do what they're going to do. Again, all of this a violation of our civil rights and our basic freedoms. We're living in a cyber dictatorship. That's really where we are right now. And again, all of these horrible tools are now out there in the hands of the cyber criminals, plundering the American people, and the government doesn't seem to want to do a thing about it. We got to take a break here for commercials. We'll be back with a caller after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And just taking a moment to step back to the situation with North Korea. Nikki Haley is up at the United Nations Security Council, and she's reading the tone of the room. China and Russia are opposed to any military action. France is saying everybody has to work collectively to try and solve this. And so Nikki Haley has basically come on out and said the United States will use military in North Korea if it must, and the U.S. won't have patience for a watered-down UN resolution. In other words, she's just said the U.S. government is ready to go rogue and attack North Korea all on its own, risking a possible war with Russia and China. So, anyway, we're going to take some phone calls. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you're doing well. I just emailed you the lyrics to an Ozzy Osbourne song called The Almighty Dollar. And the guy's no Shakespeare, but between the music and his vocals, he pretty much describes, what the problem is today. And I know you talk about it all the time. It's the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of the world. Therein lies all of the problems concerning the United States with its vast military empire and all the politicians that, are the best money can buy.
Yeah, that really is the
Am
problem.
I wrong?
The problem with the debt-based banking system is that eventually everybody becomes desperate for more money to pay their loans to the various banks, and as they get desperate, they start doing things they otherwise would not do. Rob their neighbor, rob a convenience store, invade another country. And so it really is the driving force behind all of this unhappiness.
And it's causing Americans a lot of hardship because of the debt. It's $1 trillion is going to be spent on all of the security, industrial, military complexes, and all of those government contractors that are just basically ripping people off, just line their own pockets. And they're using Russia and other countries as the boogeymen in order to justify their actions. It's crazy. Your website is great. Your talk show, your show is great.
Thank you.
I'm glad that more and more people are opening up. Their eyes are opening up. Mike, I'm going to tell you something. I work at a place where they're immigrants, right? But they went through it in legal fashion to do to get there. You know who they like? Donald Trump.
Yes.
I'm going to let you go. Thanks a lot for your time.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to start with Trish in New York. Trish, I'm going to have to take you through the station identification. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael. I'm just calling because I am very concerned about what's going on with Syria and the current lie that's being told again about the WMDs.
Okay.
And
right,
I'm a
Trish,
freelance journalist up at the UN.
Trish, I'm going to have to put you on hold.
Yeah.
It's only going to be a minute.
Sure.
Station identification. We're going to come right back to you for whatever update you have. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Trish in New York. And Trish, you have, first of all, we all know it's a lie that Assad is gassing his own people. He's got no reason to do it. The story never made any sense. But it almost feels like they're going to try another false flag and just launch the war, because otherwise the U.S. is definitely going to lose in Syria.
Well, they're preparing for the Battle of Damascus. And what's not really being covered in the media, again, is the Israeli component to this, and that Hezbollah and some of the Iranian Besiege and other military are now on the Golan Heights, and that's what this is really about, and the recent escalation, I believe. But to Cy Hirsch's piece, I'm just dumbfounded that, you know, this journalist, the preeminent journalist of America probably in the last half century, has to get his stuff published only over in Germany and can't get it mentioned in the American media. And up at the UN, it's very interesting because on February 1st, 2013, I was interviewed by this small little program at the UN called Heat in the Middle East at ICAST News, it's called. And I spoke to the interviewer there. He had been retired from CBS, and his name was Jonathan. And we talked about the Libyan weapons that were coming into the Incirlik base from Benghazi, and that they were going to be going into Syria. And we also discussed at length the setting up by NATO and the EU and the US of this global Mujahideen group, which was going to be the next phase of the overthrow of Assad. And a year later, this thing emerged called ISIS. And they asked me, they said, well, what have you heard, or what is the next escalation in this crisis? And I said, well, on the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War, there's going to be the start of the campaign where we blame Syria for WMDs like we did in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, on March 19th, sarin was set off in a place called Kaonohi, which is outside Aleppo on the Turkish border. And the Syrian government immediately went to the United Nations and tried to get this investigated, and they found every reason not to investigate it. And to this day, I don't think it's ever been investigated. And I think because it's one of the examples in this whole series of WMD allegations where it can reliably be laid at the door of Turkey and their al-Qaeda subsidiaries. So they didn't want to really go after it and expose it.
Well, so I don't know if you followed the story this morning. You know, this latest OPCW report about the incident at Idlib, where they came on out and said, yes, sarin was used. And even though they didn't say who was actually to blame, of course, the corporate media is taking this OPCW report and saying Assad gassed his own people again. He's a monster. He's a tyrant. And then it has come on out that the OPCW wrote this report without even going to Idlib to see where the incident had happened, and didn't even go to the air base where supposedly this attack originated. So it was basically just putting their name onto this incredible work of fiction. And
well, that's the role that the UN has taken now. It's become the another of the proxy weapons of the Western colonial powers. It's I mean, whatever spin they want to put on it, no scientist or forensic expert will agree that you can handle sarin with bare hands and bare feet.
No, you will die.
Yeah, and so, that rules that out right there. But what's interesting is that the head of the OPCW is Turkish. He's from Turkey.
Okay.
And he's one of the Erdogan partisans. So how objective is that going to be?
No, it's all political here. It's all political. But again, the story just doesn't make sense, and I'm going to keep hammering this point because it does look like they're getting ready to do another false flag to blame on Assad. It doesn't make sense for Assad to gas his own people. He's winning the war on the ground in Syria. The U.S.-backed rebels and terrorists are being basically driven out of the country. Russia has now declared a no-fly zone west of the Euphrates. So why would Assad do something that would allow the United States to basically justify escalation of the war and a direct attack on Damascus? And the answer is he wouldn't. He's not that stupid. He gains nothing gassing his own people. And who gains? The U.S.-backed rebels and the Western powers.
Right. Well, the bigger picture that people are not looking at is that this has been part of these are all 9/11 wars that have unfurled across the Middle East, and people ignore the first Arab Spring campaign, which was in 2005, when the U.S. and Israel assassinated a prime minister of Lebanon, and they did that based on it was another false flag, and then there were a series of assassinations across the country that, as time has come by, some of those people who initially reflexively blamed Syria, there were several journalists, Samir Kassir, George Howie, some high-profile Lebanese opposition figures, have actually come out now and have sued Israel for the death of this Prime Minister Hariri.
Yes.
And, so everyone seems to be short on memory. That was the political phase of taking out the Syrian government and dismantling Hezbollah. Now we're on the military phase because that failed at the UN. They literally could not hammer together enough fake evidence to overthrow the Assad regime in 2005, and I think that special tribunal at the UN is still going. It's despite floundering badly, but I think people need to take this as a bigger picture. This Arab Spring fakery. These are all part of the 9/11 wars. I'm seeing people treat the Libya issue, the Egyptian uprising, all these things as unrelated, disparate incidents that just happened to spring up spontaneously when people rose up, and they're all connected. They're all part of the campaign. And I had spoken to a Saudi, somebody in the Saudi monarchy, or so they claimed, back in 2006 and 2007, and emailed him and said, each of these countries is going to be taken out and overthrown, and the very last one left standing is going to be you, and you won't have any allies because you've helped to overthrow everybody else in the Middle East, but you're going down. You're just going down at the end. He got very angry with me, and so it's, but the UN, again, if they've never stepped in and condemned America or Britain or, about Iraq. Kofi Annan made a statement about what happened in Iraq was illegal. But on the whole, since the whole second Arab Spring has sprung, it is kind of like one grand campaign to take out all these countries.
Well, you know about General Wesley Clark's list, right?
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. But what's interesting is that he was on CNN. Less quoted is his interview on CNN, where he said, "Well, our friends in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Israel, armed ISIS to take out Assad and Hezbollah." And if you go back onto YouTube now and look at those videos, those two, the countries' names have been bleeped out of the audio. You see Clark's lips moving, and I've got screen caps of the YouTube where the title still says Saudi Arabia and Israel in quotes, according to Wesley Clark. But it's fascinating, the coordination among the media censorship globally. Mm-hmm. They've really got it down. Frightening.
Well, no, they don't. I mean, it's definitely all over the place, but they're not being successful. People are not buying these very obvious lies, whether it was Saddam's nuclear weapons or Assad gassing his own people, because the stories just don't make any sense when you stop and think about it.
But, Michael, I think a lot of people outside of the Internet, where people are really aware, they are buying it. I mean, and, if need be, I think they will set off another 9/11 inside the U.S. and blame it on Assad. If they can't do it one way, they'll do it the other. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that this is going to conclude without, them reaching their end point. I think that's part of why Trump was installed, to overthrow that nuclear treaty with Iran and finish the Zionist agenda over there.
Well, the IAEA just came out with another report saying that Iran is perfectly in compliance with the P5+1. But again, now they're making issue about things that were never in the P5+1. Oh my goodness, Iran is building defensive missiles. They're not allowed to defend themselves from our eventual invasion. Same thing that's going on in North Korea. Trish, is there anything else?
No, I'm just following this at the UN like you are, and it would be nice to get some real media. The independents up there get thrown out, literally out of the building, manhandled out of the building. I think you know about the story with Matthew Lee.
Yes.
He's very blunt about confronting some of the corruption up there. So it's a very closed system. You've got the sycophants that are paying court to the world dictator, perpetrator in power, and it's a very interesting microcosm. Dangerous.
Yeah, I can imagine it is, and I've heard about some of your earlier issues with the United Nations as well. Okay, Trish, thank you for the update. Please call in if you come up with anything more about what's going on. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over here to Dan in Canada. Dan, thank you for waiting so patiently all this time. What is on your mind today?
Aloha, Mike. I think Trish should get the Rivero Ranger of the Month award. That was quite enlightening. I just wanted to say something about what Mr. Don from Aiea had said regarding the Spotlight movie. And there's an interesting documentary on Netflix right now called The Keepers, and everyone needs to see this. It talks about the murder of a nun, and it was they try and cover up pedophile priest abuse, and it's about eight or nine parts, and it's definitely a must-watch. I think a lot of people are getting a lot of information from Netflix documentaries. Sometimes it's the wrong kind of information, like the white helmet, where you don't want that kind of information because it's all propaganda and lies.
Yes.
But anyways, I'll keep it brief, and I just wanted to mention that to Don in Aiea. So thanks. Good show. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And as long as we're on the subject of priestly pedophilia, two interesting stories. Apparently, the Pope's finance minister has now been officially charged with child sex abuse offenses. Cardinal George Pell, he's 76 years old, has been under investigation in his homeland since last year following allegations of sexual abuse. Police confirmed the charges relate to historical allegations made by more than one person. And Pell is facing multiple charges. There are multiple complainants. So that's not working too well. And there's been a huge, huge embarrassment over in Rome itself. apparently, there was this apartment, and the neighbors were sort of upset by what appeared to be some strange goings-on. They called the police, and this is still inside the Vatican. The Vatican police came on in and found a drug and gay sex orgy going on at this Vatican priest's apartment. And even more interestingly, the apartment is actually owned by the Congregation of the Dedication of the Faith. The Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, which is the new name for the Holy Inquisition. And that's the church office that is trying to keep a lid on all the allegations about child sex abuse and pedophilia and so forth and so on. Now, supposedly the Pope is just really angry. I don't know if he's angry that this stuff was going on or that it was exposed to the public. And they're saying the scandal may force Cardinal Francesco Coco Palmerio into early retirement. So, like election fraud, the problem may actually be a lot more widespread than any of us are really aware, and that's kind of scary. Interestingly enough, Bill Gates has now come on out and said, yes, Europe has taken too many migrants. Now, Bill Gates is a globalist. He's fully on board the New World Order. He's out there pushing mandatory vaccines, and who knows what vaccines he owns or has invested in. But even Bill Gates is saying, yeah, this has gone past the point of reasonableness, and Europe is literally falling apart from all the turmoil over there. Now, the other day we were talking about how you can still ski in California, even though it is now July, Mammoth Mountain, Lake Tahoe. And the indications are we are going into a grand solar minimum over these next 3 years, where we're going to see some really, really hard winters. And, of course, Al Gore is out there this summer with this new movie, The Inconvenient Sequel, The World is Broiling. And Professor Stephen Hawking literally came on out and said Trump's pulling out of the Paris climate deal would result in temperatures of 250 degrees on the Earth. And Professor Hawking, I think you need to go back and sort of reread that book on thermodynamics, because what you've said is about as silly as Greenpeace's claim back in the 1990s that all of the ice on Greenland would be melted in just 20 years, which, by the way, did not happen. So, do you remember Michael Mann? Michael Mann was this professor who literally came up with the hockey stick. He works down at Penn State. The Minnesotans for Global Warming actually made a spoof video about him called Hide the Decline. And Mann threatened to sue, and they pulled it back, and they reissued it without his face. But he's right at the center of this fraud. And apparently he's been in legal trouble for misusing some of his funds. And now there is a new lawsuit up in Canada that is involving Michael Mann indirectly. Now, there's a libel trial. 79-year-old Canadian climatologist Dr. Tim Ball, and it all comes down to how do you prove libel. Here's what gets interesting. They're refusing to surrender the data for open court examination. Now, remember, the basic principle of the scientific method is reproducibility of results. If I have the same data or the same experiment, I should get the same result. That means it's real. And we have seen, whether it's Michael Mann or Hadley Climate Research Unit, this constant habit of, oh no, we can't show you the raw data. Just take our word for it. The world is warming. There's a hockey stick, and you will atone for your sins against Mother Earth by paying carbon taxes and buying and selling carbon credits. You are all icky-poo, sinner human beings, and you're destroying the entire planet. And again, it's a scam. And at some point, you sort of sit bolt upright, eyes wide open, and you look around and you start to really appreciate how much of our society is a scam, one way or the other. College has been turned into a scam. ClimateGate was a scam. Got all these cyber criminals, ransomware scamming us, telephone scammers, email scammers. It's open season on the American people here. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials here. We have a caller waiting on the line that we will get to after we return from these few words from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the telephones. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, I just got in, so I'm here. I just turned your show on, so I don't know if you've talked about this or not. But I'm wondering what you think of this thing with the controversy with David Michael Steele coming on InfoWars and talking about the guy when he was talking about pedophiles. He went into this thing about I'm sorry, I can't stop. About this colony of kids up in Mars. I have three possibilities. One, that Steele maybe isn't who we thought he was, and he's still with the CIA putting out misinformation. Two, maybe there is some truth to it, though I kind of doubt it. Three is that he's actually working for the alternate media. They're angry at Jones because the way Jones is backing away from 9/11, he's backing away from Sandy Hoax and things like that. He's treated. I thought he treated Dr. Pachenik pretty badly recently, a couple of times. When he didn't want to go to certain places that Pachenik was willing to go, and that's basically Mossad involvement in 9/11. Even though Pachenik himself is Jewish, but he's a patriot before he's anything else. He's an American patriot. So I'm wondering whether that was it, because I saw on my Facebook, and also Steele was supposed to appear with Cynthia McKinney on the 3rd of July. He didn't show up, and now I saw on my Facebook him and McKinney appearing in St. Louis. I think they made a video together. So I'm just wondering, what do you think is going on with that? I know you work for NASA, right? I don't think you really believe that there's a colony of slave kids in Mars, do you?
No, I'm pretty certain that is not the case here. As far as Alex Jones is concerned, I'm looking at all this stuff about how he's changing his positions, and of course he was always a friend of Israel. There's even a YouTube video of him early in his career where he's out there saying, "I will always be a friend to Israel," and basically he declared his allegiance at that point. But as far as backing away from things like Sandy Hook and the rest of it, I really think Alex Jones is dreaming that he is going to be allowed to cross over into the corporate media. Of course, his timing is rather rotten because the corporate media is in the process of imploding. But I think that's why he's trying to be more and more mainstream in his coverage of these various issues.
Well, as far as Israel goes, he may have been a supporter of it to a degree, but he also used to talk about the Mossad, possible Mossad involvement in 9/11, and including, I believe, he talked about the dancing Israelis and things like that. But now he's backing away from all of that stuff,
Yep.
That's the way it seems to me. As far as going to the mainstream media, he claims he could have done it already. They offered him, of course, it could be BS too. He said they promised they could make him, that they approached him before they approached Glenn Beck, but he didn't want to sell out. So, again, I don't know.
Okay, well,
the truth and not,
Yeah.
But what do you think's happening with Steele? What do you think is behind Steele? I mean, I'm sure you know who Steele is, right? I don't know if you've ever had him on your show.
No, I haven't had him on the show.
All over the
Yeah, I know, but he's out there saying some very absurd things, whether he's trying to poison the well with this kind of nonsense. But yeah, it does feel like he's somebody's controlled asset.
But yeah, at the same time, Cynthia McKinney, who I don't believe is a controlled asset, seems to have a lot of confidence in the guy. So I don't know. I mean, she's a very smart individual, as a matter of fact.
Well, smart people can be suckered in. I mean, history has shown that anybody who was ever used, betrayed, lied to, had it done to them by somebody they believed they could trust. If Steele really made that comment about a Martian colony, I mean, that right there is a major blow against his credibility.
He did. I heard the show when he did. And I said to myself right there, this is going to have legs. And sure enough, another thing Jones did today, I was listening to him earlier.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Mark, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Okay, we've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking with Mark in North Carolina about, well, a wide variety of subjects. And you were about to start on a new one.
Yeah, again, with Jones's credibility, he's going to shoot his credibility. He was on with Roger Stone earlier, and they were talking about Dina Powell, who there's no doubt about it. She's a globalist. She's a Bushite, a Clintonite, both. She's not somebody that belongs in a White House. She's a neocon of the first order. But the thing is, he then went into the thing and mentioned that she's got a Muslim name, indicating that she's a Muslim. Now, I've known a long time, for a while already, that she's a Coptic Christian. It's very easy to find it out. I mean, it's all, as a matter of fact, other sites on the internet also, that her family are Coptic Christians. So by saying that, and Stone didn't correct them either. So either they don't know or they're passing misinformation. And if they're doing stuff like that, that's gonna get the alternate media. It's gonna do the same thing the alternate media that's happened to the mainstream media. You gotta have credibility. You don't say something like that unless you know it's true. Habib, by the way, is not a Muslim name, because I know, it seems like most Arabs that I know that with the name Habib are usually Christians. A lot of Lebanese, Christians are named Habib. It's a very common name, and Iraqis too, for that matter. So it's a very common name for Arab Christians. So to say stuff like that, I mean, he's hurting his credibility, and he's also hurting the credibility of the alternate media. And I have a feeling somebody's going to jump on that now too.
Well, the Washington Post already did. I'm looking at the article right now where the Washington Post is ridiculing Alex Jones for this story about NASA hiding kidnapped children on Mars. So, and I know that Jones is in serious financial trouble. Maybe somebody gave him a big chunk of money, and with that, of course, says you're going to do what we tell you to do now. And that may include using his prominent position in the independent media to try and cause harm to the independent media.
But I'm talking about the Habib thing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's not going to come out now, because they are monitoring him. He's being monitored very closely by the mainstream media and by others, and by the government, or at least certain parts of the government.
I'm sure they're doing the same here.
Of course, but I don't question your credibility. I may not agree with you 100% on things. Who's going to agree with anybody 100%? But I know you got credibility. I know you talk, you tell what you believe is the truth.
Yes.
But when you come out and saying stuff like that, just passing it along like, oh, she's got a Muslim name, and indicating she's a Muslim when she's not. And believe me, I have no use for the woman, because she's a globalist and she's a neocon. All right? So, but, if you're going to attack somebody, or if you're going to go after somebody, be honest about them. You know what I'm saying? Why you don't have to make stuff up, and if you don't know, you should have researched it. Okay, her family are both, she comes from a Coptic Christian Egyptian family. I'm not sure whether she was born in Egypt or she was born in the United States and her parents were born. I'm not quite sure, but I know that they're Coptic Christians. And I mean, be honest about it. And as far as this thing with the Mars, that with Mars, that came out like a day afterwards already.
Yep.
And everybody's making fun of him for it, even though he didn't say it himself, but he didn't totally deny it either. I mean, he didn't. He kept on saying, "Well, there are some funny things going on up there, and this and that." Now, look, I'll be honest with you. Between you and me, I know you don't believe it. I believe Roswell was for real. I think aliens crash landed there, and I think they've got I believe they have the evidence, and I have somewhere probably in Area 51 or somewhere else, or an air base in Ohio. I know you don't believe that.
No,
okay?
I have. First of all, there was a top secret project called Project Mogul that was sending these very high altitude balloons up into the atmosphere, trailing these big sheets of very thin aluminum to try and trap nuclear fallout particles from Russian nuclear, or rather, should I say, Soviet nuclear tests. and one of those crashed on the ranch. And for some reason, the PR officer of the base, trying to cover up mogul, said, well, we just recovered a flying saucer, apparently not realizing just how it was going to go completely out of control. Now, as far as alien life in the universe, I'm sure it's full of it. I'm sure there's intelligent civilizations out there. I just can't figure out a reason why they'd even bother with our planet, because when your technology evolves, your culture and society evolves with it. Frankly, an alien civilization that has achieved interstellar spaceflight, we have to look like natives with bones stuck through our nose to them. When you drive down the freeway, do you stop and investigate every anthill that you pass? I rather doubt it. And I think the same thing is true, that, alien spaceships are going to come on by and take a look at Earth from a distance and say, it's not worth the trouble. It's not worth the fuel. They don't have anything we want.
No, but I'm thinking once we've crossed the threshold with nuclear weapons and all, and jet flight and all that maybe they became more interested. Maybe they even see us as a potential threat sometime in the future, or maybe they did have something to do with our beginning. Like the Van Daniken, the ancient alien theory.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But one thing I am quite sure about, that we don't have the technology yet to go up to Mars, to send people up to Mars, let alone 20 kids 20 years ago.
It is absurd, and Steele was, he was doing a disservice to the independent media and even to Alex Jones, because now the Washington Post is kind of all over his case about that story now.
Not only the Post, it's all over it. It's all over the news on my Facebook, all over the place. My cousin, who hates anything even remotely conservative or Republican, he's an admitted communist, my cousin. He's making fun of it, he's all over the place, all over with that stuff. I mean, this Glenn Beck, I understand, is making fun of it, all his enemies are now having a field day with this stuff. And he was complaining about it. He's complaining, I didn't say that. But what he should have done, he should have said, look, let's talk about what's going on Earth. Okay, let's talk about the pedophilia going on Earth, because that's what it started. It was about the pedophile problem. Okay, let's stick to Earth with that. Forget about, I don't know what's going on out of space. No, that's what he should have said. He should have cut him off right there. And the fact that Steele didn't come on the 3rd, he was supposed to come on July 3rd with Vincent McKinney, and he didn't show up, tells you, makes me very suspicious that he threw a grenade in there to do just what he said, to destroy Jones's credibility.
Well, Jones erred in apparently not coming on down and saying the story about these kids on Mars just doesn't pass the smell test. And again, Jones doesn't have my background in the sciences, and maybe he just thought it was plausible and possible. But again, Steele has really hurt Alex Jones. He's hurt the independent media as a whole, and that may be exactly what his job is supposed to be about.
I'm really wondering about that, Mike. I really am, I mean, it's funny in a way, but it's not funny. It really had me laughing when I think about it, especially when I saw Jones's attitude once it started getting all over the media. You know what I mean? And he was starting to say, well, why are you blaming me? Why are you blaming me? I didn't say it. He didn't correct Steele either properly.
Yeah, well,
he just said, don't talk to me about
it's a classic poison the well operation. And, Alex should have called him on it the moment he said it. And then he would have some ground to stand on to say, hey, look, the guest said it. I challenged it. But no, they're going to use it to tarnish him now. So I was unaware that this had all gone down. I found the Washington Post article. I just posted it to whatreallyhappened.com. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go. We're running out of time here. We're going to take another phone call and then get back to doing some science news. James in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Yeah, as much as I would like to sometimes because of his views on the Zionist question, I don't think I could ever say that Jones was a bad guy or betraying the independent media. I don't think he would ever do that. And I think he tells it like he wants it to be a lot of times, that, he wants everybody to really get along, and I just don't see him being a bad guy. One thing I wanted to mention was...
Well, before you go any further, I'm sure in his own mind he doesn't see himself as a bad guy. I don't see myself as a bad guy. But we're both going to find we're going to find a lot of people out there who disagree, who think we're very evil people because our points of view do not line up with those.
Taking money, to scuttle the alt media or anything like that, I don't think he would ever do that.
People who are desperately broke, people who are, if you're broke enough, there is a price that can buy you, and that's unfortunately a reality of human nature. Everybody has a price. I have a price. So far, the only offer I've gotten is $1.95 and some old bottle caps, and I'm not going to sell out that cheaply.
Yeah. On another issue, I've never heard anybody say anything about a possible countermeasure for vaccinations when you don't have a choice, like people who are threatened with being fired and things like that. I have a couple ideas, at least to deal with the microbes, including viruses that might be in vaccines. I'll send you the article. Nexus magazine had an article on magnesium chloride, and two of the only unreferenced things they cite is a study. I have written the authors and asked for a reference, but one study indicated that guinea pigs given snake venom that was lethal, who were then given magnesium chloride. In humans, it's most effectively taken transdermally as a strong solution. Okay. I have a decade of experience using it myself, and I've given away hundreds of pounds to people. But they said the guinea pig survived, and it was a venomous snake. So they also said a rabbit that was bitten by a venomous snake survived after being given magnesium chloride. Number two,
I have a question. I have a question. Is this research coming out of Australia by any chance?
I don't know. They cited research on other things. They said, I'll send you the article, but they just, went to medical literature. I don't think, in particular, they relied on Australian medical citations.
Well, because Australia is the world leader in figuring out anti-venom technology, because Australia happens to have the most poisonous animals on planet Earth.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I remember when I was down there working in Australia, and I actually found a red-back spider in the restroom of this little production company I was working at. And I kept telling to try everybody, there's a redback. And they said, oh, you Yanks, you see these things ever. And then about a week later, all of a sudden, there's this shriek from the restroom, there's a redback behind the loo. And so, yeah, and I was looking because I'd read all the pamphlets on the flight down there saying, don't go near these things, beware of the redbacks. There's this little microscopic jellyfish called the irukandji. It's like an inch long, and in water it's all but invisible, and just one of them can actually kill you. Nasty stuff down there.
Right. Well, magnesium, the ion, is a potent antimicrobial when it's present in quantity for everything except fungi. And the other thing, well, there's a couple other things. DMSO, it also penetrates deeply. And with vaccines, we're talking about parenteral or intramuscular, so it's not IV. If you can catch it right after they vaccinate you, these things would probably kill they would kill microbes and inactivate viruses most likely. DMSO is a extract from wood, like magnesium chloride. It penetrates into tissue. Yeah. And it's like magnesium chloride, it's non-toxic.
And by the way, if any of you are using DMSO, the one thing you have to be scrupulous about is wherever you're going to apply it, clean the skin very thoroughly, because anything that's on the skin, any contaminant, will be taken into the body along with the DMSO. That's the caution
just
you
like
have to.
Injecting it with a syringe. And the third thing, Dr. Bob Beck, who popularized colloidal silver, also came up with blood electrification. There's a cheap electromuscle stimulator out there. I won't cite the model because it's like advertising or something, but I'm sure you can find it if you look for it. You can find them for under $30. But I've used it, and one time I had a soft tissue infection, and while they had to drain it, the microbes were, the infection was dead. It was just the pus.
Yeah.
It didn't even have any odor. So those three things, if applied, you wouldn't want to number one, you don't want to apply magnesium and then DMSO. That would probably produce tissue damage. You would have to choose between one or the other.
Okay, well, James, at this point we're venturing awfully close to providing medical information, and neither one of us is an actual physician.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor.
We have to be very careful. There are, rules in the media that we not be giving out that, detailed information of this type. We're running out of time, and James, I'm going to let you go here. We'll switch over to Rick.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Rick in Arizona, aloha, what's on your mind?
Dave, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fine.
I was listening to Art Bell's archives. There's a link. They constantly play it. And I was listening to a show from 2003, and they were discussing North Korea's launching an intercontinental ballistic missile, big threat to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 2003. So I think what we got here is an endless loop that plays with this North Korea problem. Whatever they're doing it for, I don't know, but I really doubt that they have the ability to do anything but launch a missile that can land somewhere in the ocean. So that's all I got to say today, Mike. Thank you.
Well, the truth is we don't know what they've accomplished. All we think we know about North Korea is coming from the same people who told us Saddam had nuclear weapons and Assad is gassing his own people. But we do know that North Korea has had ICBMs in development for quite a while. They have a bad habit of blowing up. This latest test suggests that maybe they worked out those particular kinks. As far as the guidance system, with a global GPS already up there, I imagine that they can probably get these things to be fairly accurate. And if it's carrying a nuclear warhead of decent size, even close, a near miss is going to be a bad, bad day. And again, North Korea is not developing these weapons to go on out and attack other people. They're terrified of being attacked by the United States, which has a track record over the last going on 2 decades of just constantly invading and regime changing other countries whose wealth they covet. And as that caller into the show earlier indicated, there's something like $1 trillion worth of mineral riches underneath North Korea, coveted by U.S. businesses that don't want to have to actually pay the full market price for them. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. In fact, don't call in. We've closed the phone lines because this is our last segment, and I don't know why they play that phone message in the bump to the last segment because it confuses people. All righty. Now, you probably have noticed on TV commercials for prescription medication, there is that very fast-talking individual at the end who will list the side effects of these drugs, the known harmful side effects. And some of them are pretty scary. If you use this medication, your nose could fall off or you could die. In many cases, it sounds like the side effects are worse than the illness the drug is intended to treat. And it is very, very scary. But the FDA is now considering a plan to scrap these warning summaries on these TV commercials on the theory that the TV viewers aren't really listening to them, and it's cutting into the time where the commercial could show how wonderful the drug really is. Well, this has got nothing to do with whether customers are actually reading the warnings, because Claire and I certainly do. We listen to the warnings, we read the package. This is more about boosting pharmaceutical sales than concern about viewer fatigue, because more and more people are getting scared of these prescription medications. They're looking for alternative medication, such as marijuana. And the DEA has just admitted marijuana has never actually killed anyone and causes happiness and merriment. But they still want to keep it illegal because it's cutting in to the profits of Big Pharma, and Big Pharma are generous campaign donors every year. And this is confirmed by an article over at Government Slaves about how a new study is showing that nearly 100% of marijuana users in those states where you're now allowed to have recreational or medical marijuana, they give up their prescription pain meds. They don't need them anymore. And that's why Big Pharma is lobbying as hard as they can to keep marijuana illegal so that you are forced to be dependent on their very expensive prescription medication. There's that word again, dependent. Keep you dependent on them, because dependency is slavery. It turns out popular heartburn drugs like Prevacid, Prilosec, and Nexium are linked to a 25% higher death risk, apparently from serious health problems such as serious kidney damage, bone fractures, and dementia. Nice stuff they're putting on out there. By the way, if you're one of those people who's carrying around your little bottle of personal disinfectant, you may be in for a shock because any of these antibacterial products using triclosan, triclocarbon, and various other bactericides, they're actually useless. Okay? Because these chemicals cause infectious bacteria to take on new traits to survive. They evolve very rapidly to survive these bactericides, and they are also harmful to pregnant women and babies. It's another case of a product that sounds really good, but turns out not to be very useful. But it makes money. Another story, this out of IntelliHub. The flu vaccine is virtually worthless in people 65 years and older. And in another couple of months, I cross that line myself. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here, get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. I'm sure he's got a lot of interesting things to share with you. Take what you learn here and at the website, share it with everybody that you know. We have to keep that pushback against this reckless rush to a new global world war because mushroom clouds do not look good in your front yard. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.